Okay, so, any other hackers here today? Yeah, a few. Any criminals here? Couple maybe? Okay, so I have a zillion things I want to show you guys, so we're going to go 180 miles an hour. Hopefully that's okay. So, this is basically my childhood in one slide. Yeah, okay. A couple of you guys can relate. That's basically the first home computer. And it's kind of a inspiring piece of shit because it's capable of 1 kiloflop, right? So it's about as fast as a third grader at math problems. But this thing kind of lights up your imagination, right? Because even though the spreadsheet hadn't been invented and there was really nothing useful you could do with it, it got me started on thinking, well, what could I do if it had more memory, if it got faster? And eventually it did. I had that thing. I lived in the cold, in the dark, in the basement in Alaska, so I didn't have anything else to do. I learned what all the little ones and zeros are doing. But I also had a skateboard, and people thought that might have been a better use of my time because nobody knew a computer was going to be useful. Eventually, we started, hooking these things up to networks, and then the security problems started to matter. And that's a very compelling, bottomless pit of puzzles for a hacker. So, this is an old buddy of mine named Sammy. Sammy's kind of a famous hacker. He got into a little bit of trouble for writing a virus that he used to meet girls on the internet. And he wasn't allowed to use computers for a few years. You know how that goes. Sammy's back now. You guys use Google Maps? You know how Google knows how to color the roads for traffic? Your phones are all just telling Google that you're stuck in traffic, right? Well, Sammy figured out he can just lie to Google. And all the roads he's about to drive on clear out. That'd be a pretty good app to have, right? Guys like Sammy have different brains than most people that you know, right? If you get a new gadget and show it to your mom, she might ask you, well, what does this do? And you can explain, it's a phone, Mom, iPhone, says on the box. But if you get a new gadget and give it to Sammy, the question is different. The question is, what can I make this do? And he's going to flip it over, take out all the screws, break it into a lot of little pieces, but then figure out what can we build from that rubble. And it's that discovery process that's fundamental to invention. It's fundamental to innovation, and without it, you never get anything new. Nobody's ever invented a new technology by reading the directions. And these are the guys who are violating the warranties before they even got the shrink wrap off. And we need them, right? We need them. I'm not saying you want to hire them, but we need their brains. So this is a protocol diagram. This is what a hacker would use to understand, in this case, SSL, the encryption system in your web browser, right? This is a super boring slide. You can ignore this. But what a hacker will do is attack every point in this protocol. What happens if I send a date from the future? What happens if I send 2 responses when the server is expecting 1? What happens if I send a 0 instead of a 1? It might break. And if I can get it to break, maybe I can get it to give me your password or credit card number, right? When you're designing something like this, you're trying to make it work for all the people who need to use it. You don't have time to think of all the deranged shit that Sammy's going to do to it. He's got a lot more time than you. That's how that works, right? This, Anopheles defensi. Female, mosquito, carrying malaria in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the most dangerous animal on Earth. Not sharks, not snakes, not spiders. Mosquito. takes almost 1 million lives a year spreading infectious disease. This is the low-hanging fruit in global health right now. We can and will need to eradicate malaria. Mosquitoes are mysterious. We don't actually understand even how they can fly. Their wings are too small for it to be Bernoulli effect. But I have a badass video camera, so I thought I'd show you what that looks like. This is a protocol diagram for malaria. Spends some of its life in a mosquito, some of its life in a human. It's super complicated. We don't understand that much about how it works. So what I do in the lab where I work is I hire hackers to attack every point in this protocol. Right? We can and will eradicate malaria once and for all in our lifetime, but we can't do it by reading the directions. There are none. This is the old-fashioned way of going after malaria. You spray chemicals that kill everything and then hope some of the good stuff comes back. This is a real ad from like the 40s. Teach your kids to sing DDT is good for me. It's not really good for you. So we thought it'd be funny to find these mosquitoes and shoot them down with laser beams. Which we sort of laughed about, but then I hired a hacker. He bought some junk on eBay, wired up some easy motion detection algorithms. 6 weeks later, we're tracking live bugs. And then we find a bug, find something moving, and we aim a laser at it. And whatever is moving, the laser signal we use to sample its wing beat frequency. And from that, we can sort out it's a bug, it's a mosquito, the species, and the gender. And then we shoot it down with a lethal laser. Here's what that looks like. She's not coming back. Here we vaporized her wing off. Yeah. Not even PETA comes to save mosquitoes. You guys can laugh. It's okay. As long as it's not cute, you can kill it. That's the rule. Here we vaporize an entire bug. This is very satisfying work if you can get it. So, okay. Let's talk about, in the lab what we did is we just tried to figure out how to take on the biggest problems we could find. Malaria. This is an invention for suppressing hurricanes. We came up with a way to reverse some of the effects of global warming. This is a device we invented. It's basically a super thermos, that R2-D2 looking thing. You can use it to put vaccines in and transport them in sub-Saharan Africa. Vaccines go in that thing. You can come back a couple of months later and they're still cold. 250,000 kids a year right now die of something they were vaccinated against because the vaccines didn't stay cold. So we can do better, but we have to try. We invented a new type of nuclear reactor that's powered by nuclear waste. What people don't realize is today's reactors are 0.7% efficient. They were designed with pencils and slide rules before we were born. And then we just stopped trying. Well, energy is probably about the biggest problem we're ever going to find. If you solve energy, you solve a bunch of other problems for free. So we have to take these things on. We can do better, but we have to try. And it all starts with that mindset of hackers, discovering what's technically possible. And this work is all happening here at the Intellectual Ventures Lab. We just bought one of every tool in the world, hired one of every kind of scientist, put them all on the same team, and started going after the biggest problems we could find. And we think, that's important. So I want to talk a little bit about, where this comes from. This whole industry, computer security, the problems we're having. And I want to kind of go over some of our greatest hits. This is one of the first ones called Blaster. Anybody remember Blaster? This is like 15 years ago, right? Look at this. Blaster was the fastest spreading worm on the internet at the time. August 11, 2003, first copy shows up. A couple days later, 30,000 instances. Now, the internet wasn't so big in those days. These are big numbers. A couple days later, 400,000 infected machines, right? Anybody else remember what was going on in August 15, 2003? Yeah, look at that. Do you remember anybody ever explaining what caused the Northeast blackout? August 14, 2003. It's very interesting. You go back and listen to like the transcripts of the call logs from people working in those power plants. And it's very funny because they're like, hey, you guys having some problem? Yeah, we're having some problem. Yeah, our computers are acting weird. Yeah, our power's out. Right? But it never occurred to anybody because our detection was so bad. Nobody even knew why we had these blackouts. It's still a big mystery. Is it a mystery to you and me? I don't think so. We talk about these problems that are happening. You know, our job in part in security is to be paranoid and think about all the catastrophic things that could go wrong, get everybody scared about how bad it could be. One problem we always imagine is that hackers are going to shut down the power grid. We've been doing that for a long time, right? Remember last year, for the first time, hackers really did shut down the power grid in the Ukraine. Very sophisticated attack. Hacked in, rewrote the firmware on a bunch of little, I think like USB Ethernet adapters, so that, you know, even if they rebooted the machines, they wouldn't come back online. That was pretty swift. The power was out for a few 100,000 homes for a few hours. You know, I mean, it's bad, but, you know, we're used to these things. You guys should all have a very deep sense of deja vu, right? We've seen all this before. And what we're doing here is we're playing a war of escalation, right? New problems come, we run system update. More new problems come, we keep patching, we keep advancing our ability to defend things, advancing our ability to detect things, advancing our ability to mitigate those problems. And it's a war you lose if you stop playing. It's a game you lose if you stop playing. But we know what to do. We can do a good job at these things if we're diligent, right? Anybody remember Aurora? This was like the biggest botnet about, I want to say 7-8 years ago. This is the one Google blamed China for using when they pulled out of China, right? They said the Chinese government was creating a botnet to attack them. And so Aurora was very interesting. Some buddies of mine figured out where the command and control machine for Aurora was in a data center in Hong Kong. We have a buddy there, so we had him go take a picture of it. But then we hacked into command and control. Now, when you do that, you don't shut it down because that exposes your position, and then they just move it somewhere else. What you do is you sit and watch. What's it being used for? Now, Aurora was the biggest botnet on the internet at the time. And what we saw was really interesting and unprecedented. What we saw Aurora being used for, it had bots all over in corporations all over the world. And the hackers were using those as entry points to go inside of a company, watch the local network, and then steal the credentials of coders using version control, right? And then masquerading as a coder on a software development project, and then checking in little bugs, right? Into version control, so that the next version of your product, when it ships, shrink-wrapped in a box on a shelf, comes certified pre-owned. right? That's sophisticated, advanced corporate espionage, right? This is 8 years ago, right? Things are advancing into unprecedented territory all the time. It's our job to keep up, right? You guys remember Stuxnet? Yeah, another one of our greatest hits. Stuxnet was, a couple of unnamed countries, 2 of them, working together to make to attack, a nuclear fuel enrichment plant. That's what this is, outside of Tehran. Those are centrifuges used for enriching uranium to make nuclear reactors or bombs, right? So what happened with Stuxnet? Well, the thing started out as a virus sitting on a USB thumb drive, a little flash drive, left at bars in the, left around in the area, waiting for some contractors who worked at this plant to pick them up, because this is an air-gapped network, not on the internet. And then that virus was really smart. It would get on a computer and it was specifically targeting this plant. The virus spread all over the world, but it was benign everywhere else because it didn't find what it was looking for. It was looking for the computer that controls those centrifuges. And then when it found it, it did this amazing thing. This is like the most exciting part. Stuxnet. You know how if you watch like a heist movie, there's always this scene where they go in and find the VCR that's, recording the video from the surveillance cameras, and then they hook it up to a tape that just shows the security guy, nothing's going on, while meanwhile they're looting the vault. Yeah, that's exactly what Stuxnet did. It recorded business as usual on the monitoring network for these sets of industrial machines. And then it just played back business as usual, so the guys watching the monitoring think that everything's fine. But meanwhile, it's forcing these things to spin erratically. And these are very finely tuned machines, so that cause them to destroy themselves. The Obama administration claims this set back Iran's nuclear fuel enrichment program by at least 3 years. Right? This is very large scale, very sophisticated cyber warfare between nations, right? This is the world we live in. And that's, I think, 5 years ago? That's not what nuclear fuel enrichment plants in America look like. You guys remember Mirai from last year? Certainly you know Mirai. You're not all born yesterday. Mirai was the biggest botnet made last year. So the biggest botnet ever. But it was made out of webcams, which are kind of prototypical IoTs, right? People just buy these things, plug it into Ethernet, hook it up to the internet. Well, it turns out a lot of these things have a default password. You can't even change it. It's hard-coded into the firmware. So we tell people, change the default password. Can't change this one, right? Some kids figured this out, started building a big botnet out of it. They succeeded so well, the botnet, they only wanted to use it for DDoS attacks. So they built this huge botnet that could put out a terabit a second of spurious traffic, DDoS traffic. You know what they used it for? They used it to bring Netflix down and PayPal and a couple other websites. Netflix was down for about 12 minutes. Catastrophic failure, biggest DDoS attack in history. Okay, don't freak out, guys. It's probably a net win for society if Netflix is down for 12 minutes. I don't know. But, we reboot, patch things, recover. We're doing okay, right? We recovered from this stuff. I'm trying to help you understand, we're never gonna win. That's not the goal. The goal is to understand, this is really important. The industry we're in, the work that we're doing is important. It's It's one of the best. It's like, look, when I started, I couldn't give away a code audit or a pen test. Nobody wanted that. Now we have an industry, and it's growing every year, and it's important because these things affect our businesses, they affect people, and they're problems that we can solve. This is an exciting industry because it changes all the time. It's new, right? We're always advancing. We get to use every new technology in our toolkit to solve these problems, right? Here's what I want you to think about. If you were any country in the world besides the United States, would you rather control our land or our computers? We're set up pretty well to defend the land. I don't think anybody's coming for it. The economic value in the world is in corporations, it's in the computers that they run. That's the new frontier. That's the target of choice. And that's what we're working on trying to solve. How do we protect that value? I'm going to get off stage. I will be around for the afternoon. Please come find me. Tell me what you're working on. I'm super interested in the kinds of things you guys are working on. And I love getting to meet everyone. So thank you.